Welcome to the NanoCap podcast. I'm your host, Will Chernlin, and I'm excited to have you join me on this journey through the world of NanoCap companies. For the past decade, I've talked to thousands of business owners across various industries. It's been an enlightening experience revealing the vast tapestries of entrepreneurship and innovation that thrives beneath the surface of mainstream media coverage. Each week, I will interview different leaders of NanoCap publicly traded companies to learn about their history, what they do now, and their future. As a reminder, none of this information is financial advice, and it is all for entertainment purposes only. Let's start this week's episode. Hi, everyone. This week we have Greg Duncan, the CEO of Dogwood Therapeutics, stock ticker DWTX. Dogwood Therapeutics is a developmental stage biotech company that focuses on the development of medicine that treats pain and fatigue-related disorders. Greg, thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Will. Really appreciate being here.
Greg, as with all my guests, kind of start with their LinkedIn profile. You have kind of a interesting, eclectic LinkedIn profile from the biotech point of view. It looks like you played college football for a little bit, and then got your master's down in Georgia, where you live today. But tell me just a little bit about your travels. As I looked, you worked for multinational different corporations. You worked in different countries and such. Tell me about your work history and your travels and where you lived and where you liked best and such.
Sure. Thank you again for having me join today, Will. So I've been in life sciences for my whole career. I actually started out with Pfizer, sadly to say, over 35 years ago at this point. Great company. We took the company from, I would say, probably 15th or 16th ranked in the U.S. to the second highest market cap across the globe, behind only Exxon in 2000, which was a great environment in which to learn. I had the good fortune of launching Zoloft and Aricept for Pfizer. I had the good opportunity to run their marketing group. I was in sales for a little while, spent a couple of years in the UK with my wife, pre-kids, came back to the US, was running Pfizer's Latina business when I moved abroad again back to Belgium to join a company called UCB, a specialty pharma company. Spent 2 years in Belgium and then came back here to Atlanta to be the president of UCB's North American business and part of their executive committee. And through that journey, you realize there's a lot of good places to be. And one thing really emerged, and that is most of the true innovation in drug development is coming from smaller companies, biotech companies, who, in contrast to a Pfizer, which has a big footprint, or UCB, which has a full-on specialty footprint, companies like Dogwood Therapeutics are very focused in a specific area. And so it allows you to go very deep in an area, to know the key opinion leaders, to know the science at a very in-depth level, and to really put safety nets, if you will, with good thinking, good decisions around developing new therapies. And so I made the jump from the established companies into the development side of the business a little over 10 years ago and have been here ever since. So living here in Georgia, loved London, loved Brussels, but do love the United States best, I have to say.
I can't think of two more polar opposite places than Brussels and Atlanta, culture-wise, cuisine, everything, weather. Definitely get to see both sides of the coin. So you have this super long, illustrious career of working in pharma, biotech. When did you hear about Dogwood Therapeutics for the first time, and kind of what got you excited about this more than the dozens of other ideas you may hear a year?
Yeah, so in fact, Dogwood was born out of the merger of my predecessor company, Virios Therapeutics, and an acquisition we made about 12 months ago of a company called WEX Pharmaceuticals based out of Vancouver, Canada. And what we really liked about WEX is they have a very novel non-opioid pain target they've been pursuing. Their lead asset, Halneuron, which is now our lead asset, has shown very good utility, both efficacy and safety, in treating both cancer-related pain as well as pain that's associated with chemotherapy. And so what the motivation was for bringing Dogwood together was to bring our team, which has extensive experience in pain management and neuropathy. We've gotten drugs like Celebrex and Lyrica across the goal line. These are blockbuster drugs. Pair that up with Halneuron, the WEX asset, and do some real good for patients, because just to give this some context, There's about 20 million new cancer diagnoses each year. About half of those patients go on to be treated with chemotherapy. So that's about 10 million people. About 1 in 3, a little less, about 30% of those patients, a full 6 months after the last chemotherapy dose, are still suffering from pain and neuropathy because of the off-target effects of chemotherapy. That's where we come in with Halneuron. We want to reduce that pain signaling that's associated with the periphery, the hands and the feet, that is very common in these chemotherapy-treated patients, and establish a better quality of life for them by shutting off that pain signaling and providing them with a much better quality of care. So think about it. You get a cancer diagnosis, you go through all the trappings of chemo, hair loss, feeling, flu-like symptoms for months through your doses, and then 6 months afterwards, now you've got another issue to deal with, pain and neuropathy. We hope to do some real good for these patients because there's really nothing approved to treat this particular condition at this point. So that was the motivation for creation of Dogwood Therapeutics and putting Virios and Wex Pharmaceuticals together.
So before we get into Halneuron, in just your own words, what is Dogwood Therapeutics?
We are the only company I'm aware of that's exclusively focused on advancing care for patients who are suffering from pain and neuropathy that's associated with chemotherapy. It's a very, very large market opportunity, and with success in this particular indication, we think we can do good for patients with other neuropathies like diabetic peripheral neuropathy or general cancer pain. And we're on that voyage and look forward to our first data readout with Halneuron, an interim readout in December of this year. So very exciting times for Dogwood.
So I did my best to research it, but I would love again to hear in your own words how Halneuron works and how it's a non-opiate solution. And so it works a little bit differently in the body.
Yes. So it is a different chemical structure than opioids or the classic opioid class of drugs. The drug is actually, interestingly enough, presently harvested from the ovaries of pufferfish, an Asian delicacy. And so we harvest these ovaries and we can create an active ingredient called tetrodotoxin. Tetrodotoxin is a sodium channel inhibitor. Specifically, it targets the NaV 1.7 sodium channel. So for just a brief biology lesson, you have a central nervous system. I think everybody's familiar with the fact that they have a brain and a spinal cord, and that's where you process things. What most people don't realize is that processing from your periphery, your hands and your feet, has to transit the peripheral nervous system. That's where the NaV 1.7 sodium channel is located. And so there's great preclinical research showing that inhibiting this particular signaling pathway, so we slow down the signal or diminish the signal, provides pain relief in test subjects and preclinical research. We have human clinical trial data showing reduction in pain in both cancer and chemotherapy-treated patients. And importantly, and this was the thing that probably had us most excited, there's actually a group of patients across the globe that have a very rare disease. The disease is called congenital insensitivity to pain syndrome. These patients do not have any NaV 1.7 function. So as a consequence, that peripheral pain read, I feel heat, I feel pain from the periphery, never gets processed to the central nervous system. So as an example, these children, when they're young that have this rare disorder, put their hand on a stove, and where you and I might pull our hand off, they wind up with debilitating third-degree burns because they don't have that pain segment. So think of the opposite side of that. In something like chemotherapy-induced neuropathy, that signal is passing all day long. It gets super overheated. So our thesis is, much like these patients who do not have this function and don't feel pain, if we can diminish or inhibit that signal, it stands to reason that we should be able to reduce pain for those patients who have active NaV 1.7 functioning, and we've seen it in clinical trials. That's what has us really excited.
So you mentioned people having pain still, say, 6 months after going through chemo. Mm-hmm. So that makes me wonder, when would you take your pain solution? Would you take it while you're going through chemotherapy? Would you continue on it afterwards? Is it something that you take a dose right before your chemotherapy session? Or is it something you just take on the side every week no matter what? How is it administered?
Very good question, Will. So at present, what we've agreed with FDA is that we will start treatment with Halneuron for patients 90 days at least after the last chemotherapy diagnosis. The reason being, if I were to step back, we talked to the oncologists, somewhere between probably 70 and upwards of 90% of patients who are going through chemotherapy, 8 doses, 10 doses, 12 doses, exhibit some form of neuropathy or neuropathic pain through the course of their treatment. As I mentioned earlier in our discussion, 6 months after the chemotherapy, there's still 1 in 3 patients who have this chronic pain. And so what we've agreed with FDA is that let's study that group of patients first. It's the highest unmet medical need. And for that other 2/3 of patients, that pain resides after their chemotherapy leaves. So there's really true unmet medical need for that 1 in 3 patients. So that's where we're starting the administration of Halneuron therapy. But as we've learned more about this disease, we know that patients actually stop their chemotherapy because of either neuropathy, numbness, tingling, gait, abnormal gait, or pain. So with success in this group who've already gone through their chemo, what we would do is expand the research program to move upstream to start to treat patients concurrently who are getting their chemo to give them a better quality of life through the chemo, and for those patients who stop the chemo to give them a better shot of staying on the chemotherapy treatment. So we will move upstream with success where we're located right now, which is after chemotherapy treatment.
All right, here comes the mega question for you. I'll give yourself plenty of time to answer, but what's the timeline look for this getting it approved through the different trials, and then as you hit each phase, in phase 3, say, are you looking for like a partner to help you distribute? Are you looking for someone else to manufacture? Are you going to distribute the drug yourself? You going to team up with your old buddies at Pfizer? What's one of the kind of most straightforward path that you envision for the drug, say, for the next few years?
Sure. So just to give you a sense, we've gone through phase 2A work. We are presently recruiting patients in a phase 2B trial that's ongoing right now. We've recruited north of 100 patients, and we'll take the data from the completers of that 100 patients of the target 200 and do an interim assessment, a blinded interim assessment, in about a month's time to assess how the trial's going, what is the relative effect size, and we ask an external party to provide us with a recommendation. So we stay blinded to tell us, should we stay at 200? Do we need 150 patients because the drug's working a little better than we thought? Do we need 210 patients because it's working a little less as good as we thought we would see? The effect size is a little bit smaller. And so that readout will come in December of this year. Presuming we stay around 200 patients, we'll have full data from this study in the middle of 2026. We will take those data, sit down with FDA, and scope out the full-on phase 3 program. That phase 3 program will likely start in the first half of 2027 and run for 2027 and 2028. The goal will be to file an IND sometime towards the end of 28, 29, with a goal to launch the drug in 2029. That may seem like a long time, but here's some good news. We do manufacture this with partners, with a contract manufacturing organization. And part of the reason we're really excited about this drug is not just because of the data, but WEX had actually developed a process, which we've now refined further, to develop a fully synthetic or man-made, if you will, version of this particular compound. That does a couple things. One, FDA likes man-made processes that are much more repeatable than fishing and hunting down fish and harvesting the fish. We have higher yields and lower costs. And importantly, imminently, we expect to file new intellectual property protection, which will reset our IP clock a fresh 20 years. So as I just mentioned, we expect to file the IND the end of 28, beginning of 29, with a goal to launch the drug sometime end of 29 or call it 2030. We still will have very ample patent life, north of 15 years of patent life, to have Halneuron reach its full commercial potential, both in cancer-related pain, and we have some other ideas about other places this particular mechanism could really enhance patient care.
Yeah, it's amazing how much modern day medicine is still trying to figure out how to take some sort of animal enzyme and mass produce it synthetically. It's amazing what's out there in nature if we just can isolate it and put it in the right people. So
yeah, I mean, to your point, we've all heard of Botox.
Yeah.
So chodotoxin, our drug, is a toxin. It's formed from the diet of the pufferfish and it's produced in their ovaries. It's basically a bacteria. Botox is a toxin. It's basically a toxin you inject into your face to reduce wrinkles. I think as time has gone on, the idea of naturally sourced products has gained quite a bit of momentum, even toxins. And I'm very pleased to tell you that with this synthetic formulation, we will really be one of the first companies that's able to fundamentally transform a toxin into mass-produced synthetic formulation. And are looking forward to filing that IP sometime, as I mentioned, relatively imminently.
Yeah, my mind went to the insulin and the GLP-1s, and when they used to run out of pigs at the slaughterhouse to make insulin and couldn't figure out a better solution. It sounds so barbaric, but it's cutting edge at the same time.
Yeah, I think, animals serve a purpose. They're bred in our particular industry to be able to be used for testing because, in the scheme of things, in the hierarchy of things, humans obviously are more important than animals. And so while it's unfortunate, it is a necessary step to make sure we don't expose humans to toxins or drugs that can hurt them. We use that step wisely. And then obviously, as you've mentioned, with success, you can have really dramatic effects for changing patient care.
Before we move on real quick, just because I'm curious, do you all contract to some pufferfish farm out in like Southeast Asia that has a bunch of them? Or how does that, like the mass production of pufferfish, how does that even work?
Yeah, so the fish we harvest to gain the current formulation are actually harvested from the wild. And part of the reason for that is because their diet is a little bit more diverse, and it's their diet that actually produces the toxin in the ovaries. So technically, I guess you could set up hatcheries to do this, but I'm not sure that the diet would be concordant with what you see in the natural environment. But the good news is we don't have to think about that anymore. So we're using the current sourcing for the phase 2B trial, but our plan is to file this new IP, but importantly, accelerate that process with FDA feedback so that that synthetic version is ready for phase 3. The drug we hope to take to market will be the synthetic formulation of Halneuron.
So I know Dogwood Therapeutics has a few other things going on besides Halneuron. Would love to hear more about that, more about IMC2 and long COVID, and tell me a little bit more about kind of what else you guys have.
Sure. You're familiar with Halneuron. We do think Halneuron has pipeline potential in and of itself. So we think that in addition to chemotherapy-induced neuropathy or neuropathic pain, we can also look at general cancer pain like large tumors, which is imagined are very painful, and also post-acute surgical pain. So I redid my hip recently, and I was hit with a shot of bupivacaine in the wound site. That provided me with relief for about 24 hours. Unfortunately, the bridge to get you to your rehab is opioids. And so if you think about this, if you can inject this drug, and we've seen effects on average that last for about 58 days, if we can get people to jump step opioids and get them to their rehab, that could be revolutionary for post-acute surgical pain. So we do believe there's massive opportunity just in the NaV 1.7 mechanism. We have a second asset that's targeting neuropathy and pain associated with chemotherapy called SP16. We announced about 2 months ago we have now acquired global rights to SP16, which is an LRP1 agonist. It has analgesic and anti-inflammatory properties to reduce pain, as demonstrated in preclinical research. Importantly, preclinical research has also demonstrated the ability to grow neurites. This drug, in addition to having anti-inflammatory effects, reducing IL-6 and things like TNF-alpha, has also protein signaling activity. And so protein signaling activity that encourages the survival, the growth of new cells, neurons in particular, could hold great potential for reducing conversion to neuropathy or potentially restoring functionality after neuropathy if we can test that and show it in humans, not just in animals, but in humans. And so it's early days with SP16, but the mechanism has, we think, very good utility for a broader group of neuropathic or neuropathy patients post-chemotherapy. IMC1 and IMC2 came from Virios. Remember, Dogwood was formed through the integration of Virios and Wex Pharmaceuticals. We were focused at Virios on combination antiviral therapies. There are two programs in that particular part of the combination antiviral platform. One is IMC-1. This is a combination of famciclovir and celecoxib, or Celebrex as you would know it, which reduces viral activation. And we've seen in clinical trials that we believe viral activation is potentially the bad actor for at least a portion, if not all, of patients that have fibromyalgia. So we have very good phase 2A data right there, and we're looking to partner that particular asset with companies in the pain space.
Yeah, I just wanted
question.
ask a quick follow-up on that. Yeah, as I was doing research, they were talking about in your research that you're learning about how fibromyalgia can be like connected to infections like herpes. Can you talk a little bit more about that and kind of what the implications of that could be?
Yeah. So let me give you an analogy. I think everybody now is familiar with shingles. Shingles is basically reactivation of a herpes virus you had when you were a child or very young adult. It's that reactivation that leads to very painful condition known as shingles. That's why people are now taking the vaccine to try and avoid that reactivation. We believe that same reactivation of viruses can cause fibromyalgia, irritable bowel syndrome, and long COVID. In fact, we don't think it's the COVID virus that's causing long COVID. We think when you stack another virus on top of all these viruses, the immune system gets stressed out and can't keep track of them in layman's terms, and you get reactivation of herpes 1 and herpes 2. And so the thesis, the reason Virios was formed was based on this particular discovery, which was that reactivation of these viruses can lead to things like fibromyalgia and IBS, which if you think about it, symptom-wise, the symptoms are always on, but they tend to wax and wane over time. You're not always in severe states of fibro. You can go from mild to moderate to moderate to severe, etc. And so it stands to reason that with symptoms that are waxing and waning over time, it's likely an infection, the immune response, or a combination of the two. And we have data in a phase 2A study showing that usage of this combination antiviral can reduce pain and fatigue at statistically significant levels that's associated with fibromyalgia, which we believe is triggered by the reactivation of herpes viruses. So there's a lot of scientific research in the area about the bad actor known as reactivation of herpes. Much like shingles, we think that's the bad actor in fibromyalgia as well.
I read somewhere, and please do correct me if I'm wrong, that you all are focusing more on the fatigue side there than the pain side, since it'll be kind of easier to get through the FDA trials and kind of help people that much faster.
So the two programs are focused on fibro and long COVID. A long COVID program is a different antiviral with celecoxib. Okay. But effectively, in fibromyalgia, to gain approval, and we know this because our team has actually gotten 2 of the 3 approved drugs across the goal line with FDA to the market to patients, you need to show statistically significant reductions in pain and fatigue. So we're focused on both for IMC-1, which is now ready to go into phase 3. That's what we're looking to partner. Reduction of pain and fatigue statistically for patients with fibromyalgia. Long COVID is very different, and here we're actually in the leading edge of trying to design what a drug development program would look like, have met with FDA, showed the reduction in fatigue that's associated with treatment on valciclovir and celecoxib, and have agreed with FDA that fatigue would serve as the primary endpoint for assessing the utility of IMC-2 as a treatment for long COVID. And so that is the program we've agreed with FDA. Right now, as we've mentioned, I believe it was in our quarter 2 earnings release, because of all of the disruption in NIH, we are partnering of IMC-2 in long COVID on simmer and waiting for the dust to settle, because if you think about it, and this will make sense when I say it to you, the vast majority of research, the vast majority of commercial dollars used for treatments for either COVID or long COVID come from governments. These are government-funded programs so we're waiting for the dust to settle, because we actually were in discussion with NIH about possibly funding a phase 2B study in long COVID for IMC-2. So once that settles down, we will look to re-engage on that particular opportunity, but are still discussing IMC-1 as a potential partner opportunity with larger pharmaceutical companies that are focused on pain.
Well, Greg, thank you so much for your time today. As we wrap up here, what gets you out of bed in the morning? What gets you excited about Dogwood? What do you think every morning you say, hey, this is what gets me going? What's your why?
So I will say I've had the good fortune of developing and commercializing a number of household name drugs. Zoloft, Celebrex, Viagra, Lipitor. I've had the
I think
good
it's
opportunity.
azithromycin.
Z-Pak is another one.
That's yeah.
So having had that good fortune of working on probably 35 or 40 drugs that are in the marketplace, they kind of become like your children. You don't ever pick one that's a favorite of the others. They all have different personalities. But I can tell you at present, and some diseases are more garner more empathy than others. So I worked in cystic fibrosis, where patients were dying before their 18th birthday. Cancer is another one of those diseases where people have to go through hell and back to get their life back. And so if you think about it, we have something that can actually take them through the last hurdle they're going through relative to this pain, which is hugely debilitating, and in some cases stopping them from taking their chemo. Think about it. You need chemo to stay alive. The pain is so bad you stop taking your chemotherapy. That's awful. And so it's not hard to get out of bed in the morning. And I think my team is, I can give all the speeches I want, but what my team and I are really focused on is if we get it right for those patients, if we truly make their quality of life better, all of our stakeholders, our shareholders, patients, payers, and most importantly, patients themselves and their families, all the stakeholders will be happy. And that's a pretty easy thing to get out of bed in the morning to fight for. So thank you for asking.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for your time today, Greg. If any of my listeners want to learn more about Dogwood Therapeutics and what you all are up to, where should I send them?
Please send them to DWTX, IR, Investor Relations, IR, at DWTX.com. And we answer the emails and answer the telephone.
Awesome. Sounds good. And for those of you still listening, please remember to subscribe and review. Thanks.
Thank you, Will.
This podcast is for informational purposes only and does not provide financial, legal, or any other advice. The information is not investment advice or any offer to buy or sell any securities or to make any investment. The views expressed by the guests are their own, and any reference to third-party products, services, or information does not constitute an endorsement therefor by NanoCap Podcast or its affiliates. The NanoCap Podcast express disclaims all liability for any individual's use of the information presented